Let's go, pal.
Hello fellow legends, Dapster Plays here with more Cyberpunk for you guys. Today we are doing something different. We're going into the lore of the Nomads, which are one of the factions in Cyberpunk. I'll be covering a vast amount of Nomad lore and information in this video. From who they are to how they're structured, and some of their rules, to their history, and just an overview of them. And I have more videos like this that I plan on making in the future. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you enjoy this kind of content, consider subscribing if you will, and hit the notification bell for future updates on new content. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into it guys. So who are the Nomads? Well, according to the Cyberpunk wiki on fandom, which is where I got most of my information from, and the shards inside the actual game, they're road warriors and gypsies who roam the highway. Nomads are dedicated to being independent from the corporations, the cities, the government, and just practically everything but each other. And with good reason too, in my opinion, because the world of Cyberpunk is pretty crazy. And as you see throughout the main storyline, you can see how the government is pretty corrupt in that game, especially the high-end corporations. So their response is to be independent and be constantly on the road, which is why they're called nomads. They're independent from the cities and everything else. But that doesn't mean that they don't care for each other and their families. In fact, families are one of the nomads' greatest focuses. And because they're to themselves all the time, no one really seems to get them and understand them. They just see them as troublemakers, and you know how that works. And as the Cyberpunk wiki says, the corporations don't like anything they can't control, which is exactly what the Nomads are. And since the Nomads are independent, the government don't like them either, and because of that, they're always on the run and relocating their camps. And you can even see the Aldecaldos move camps a few times in game, which I think is a pretty nice detail that they added. Good job, CD Projekt Red. As a result of them always being on the move and always having a town on wheels practically, their towns are usually made up of tents, RVs, and even makeshift huts. The biggest thing that I feel like makes the Nomads different from the other factions in the game isn't their nomadic nature or their Mad Max flow. It's one word, and that word is family. Yeah, I know, it's pretty cheesy of me to say, but before you guys are yelling at the screen, let me explain to you in a minute. The Nomads actually do value family above almost every other thing. It's literally inside the nomadic code. And not only that, but you can feel it. You can just feel it inside of the game. Hands down to the game makers of this game, they did really good with portraying the closeness of the Nomads and how close and tight-knit the community is. And you literally, if you play their missions, you can feel the emotion and the closeness of the Nomads in their camp. Like, you just walk through the camp and you see people around a campfire playing guitar, just having fun, and they're just chilling with each other, even though all this crazy stuff is happening all around them in Night City, and they're just together having a nice time, and they just watch out over each other like a family, and that's literally what they call themselves. So yeah, the biggest thing, in my opinion, that makes the Nomads different from any of the other factions is their closeness and their family. And this faction really is a nice addition to this game, being that the theme is corporate greed and how the corporations are playing dirty and everything, and it's every man for themselves in that city. So being able to leave the city and right outside you see the Nomads all close-knit and everything, that's a really nice feeling in the game, and they did really well in portraying that. Okay, enough about thoughts and back to the lore. So the Nomads aren't just a bunch of wild hooligans or anything. They have a good structure and a code and everything. I mean, by the time the game starts, there's been Nomads for hundreds of years, so it's only natural that they have a structure. The littlest section of Nomads are called families, and families can range from 2 people to as many as 100. They're practically just groups of people coming together in nomads. Then you got clans. Clans are made up of several different groups of people and range from a few hundred to over 1,000 members. So a couple of families can make up a clan. And then after clans, you got tribes. Tribes consist of several clans and numbers to several tens of thousands of members. That gets pretty high. After tribes, we got the biggest measurement of nomads, and they're called nations. Nations are the biggest group and number in hundreds of thousands. The biggest nation, which is called Snake Nation, has about 1 million members, and that is a lot. Snake Nation is literally the biggest nomad nation out there. And now that we're on the topic of nations, there are 7 different nations of nomads in North America. They go by the name of the 7 nations. The 7 nations are Snake Nation, Blood Nation, the Folk Nation, the Jodes, the Dalmas Nation, Metacorp, and my personal favorite, the Aldecaldos. And we can get into each of the nations in a separate video, because I don't want the video to be too long, and we can get into it later. There's also another group called the Raf and Shiv, but they're not nomads, according to nomads. And if you told a nomad that they were nomads, you probably would get them really angry, because the Raf and Shiv are hated by nomads. So who are the Raf and Shiv? Well, according to a shard you find called Nomads for the Thick Skin, they're practically just a bunch of raiders and lunatics who just go around the Badlands doing crazy stuff and terrible stuff like murder, and they even enslave people that they get a chance to enslave, which is, if you need a reference, they're like Fallout Raiders. A big portion of the Raf and Shiv consists of ex-nomads who were kicked out of the clan for doing some terrible messed up stuff, or just criminals on the run. In that same shard that you find that tells you about them, it tells you to never work with them for any reason, and you would be crazy to. That's the Raf and Shivs for you folks. The Raf and Shiv group that's in Cyberpunk 2077 are the Race. The Race reside in the Badlands, which is the desert area outside of Night City. It's pretty abandoned by everyone but like the nomads, so that's where they live. Alright, enough of those lunatics. The first nomad code that was written has 6 different rules. Rule 1, protect and respect your clan, and especially your family. Rule 2, you are worth as much as your word. Rule 3, share with others in your clan. Rule 4, respect the privacy and well-being of your clan. Rule 5, never put your clan in danger. Rule 6, always take honest pay for honest work. That was the first nomad code, but the new nomad code only has 3 rules. The first rule, protect your family and your clan, in that order, your family and your clan. Rule 2, do not steal from anyone in your clan. And Rule 3, do not keep for yourself that which may help another in your clan. Yeah, the new one is more to the point, obviously, because there's only 3, and they focus mostly on the clan and the families, whereas the old code focuses on the families and other stuff too. Okay, so now we're going to the Nomad History, which is pretty long. It all started with the formation of the Aldecaldos. The Aldecaldos were formed in the 1990s in the same period of the collapse, which is, pretty much in short, is the downfall of the US government. But don't worry, things get better obviously, but it still was a seriously bad time in cyberpunk history. During this period, a lot of LA was pretty much a complete war zone, where there were gangs, so much bad stuff, negativity, and just total craziness. And at this point of history, there is no hope in LA. That's when Juan Aldecaldo came in. And that's how the Nomads started. They started out helping each other as a big family, and they just grew bigger and bigger. I'm not going to go too into detail about what happened with Juan Aldecaldo, because I want to do a separate video on the Aldecaldos, because they have a big influence in Cyberpunk 2077, and I would like to make a specially focused video on them. Plus, that would make this a very long video if I did that for each nation, and I would like to keep it a decent amount of time. But anyways, most of the nomads in the beginning states of the Nomad faction were ex-farmers that had to leave their land due to the many natural disasters that were happening at that time, and due to the whole corporate taking over the nations with their machinery and all that. So you can imagine what happened next. All these farmers with families without a job, they started to travel together and gathering in larger and larger groups, looking for homes and for families. They were looking for somewhere where they could call home and for jobs. However, as they were traveling across the states, what they saw during those journeys convinced them that they were better off constantly on the move. And that's why the nomads are always on the move and they're always to themselves, they're always independent. That's where the nomad ideals came into place, which are we stick to ourselves and the family comes first always. However, things changed in 2020. They grew into Mad Max-styled gang-like groups fighting among themselves and being pirates to anyone who enters their territory. Yeah, that doesn't sound like the nomads we've been talking about, and it definitely wasn't a pretty time for the nomads. However, things changed after the Night City Holocaust, aka Arasaka headquarters bombing. And for those of you who do not know what that was, it's a bombing on Arasaka headquarters to happen in 2023. This bombing was led by the famous rocker boy Johnny Silverhand and Solo Morgan Blackhand. Sounds familiar? It probably does if you played through some of the main storyline of Cyberpunk 2077. The reason why is because in that game you get to experience it in Johnny's point of view. Now I won't spoil the details for you, but long story short, Johnny had a pocket nuke and he blew up the Corporal Plaza and a large portion of City Center. And that's not to mention the nuclear fallout flowing all throughout Night City at that point. So after the bombing, the nomads put their differences aside and started working together again to help fix and clean up the city. And this was a pretty ironic time because, like I said earlier, the government and the corporations really did not like the nomads. Normally they would sneer at their ideals and at them in general. But the Night Corp hired many nomads to help clean up the city because the city needed people that were not only experienced at building stuff like the nomads, but people who were brave enough to knowingly put their lives on the line. I mean, there was nuclear fallout all throughout the city because of the nuclear bomb. There were many unrecorded casualties of nomads because Night Corp only counted the citizens of the city, and they said there were little casualties because they didn't count the nomads. They're not residents. They saw the nomads as outsiders because they don't live in the city. We didn't fall for your trick, Night Corp. We know the truth. Alright, on to the next part. When Night City was the original hub, people built many different small suburbs and towns around it. However, due to the cities being too far out to protect from gangs and raiders and troublemakers, most of the towns were abandoned from 2000 to 2020. Now supported by the nomads, the reclaimers are attempting to transform ghost towns into new homes for those who are dispossessed by the city. And I want to quickly point out that you can actually find a bunch of these abandoned towns in the actual game around Night City. You even have a main mission there when you first meet Pan Am Palmer. And if you're curious on what that mission is, it's called Ghost Town. And now you know why. But anyways, I just wanted to point that out, and I like how the game adds those kind of little details to support the lore. That really interests me. In the 2020s, the open world was home to the raiders or the gangs, and the well-protected nomad caravans. However, as the nomad families take greater control of the world's shipping routes and commerce, they're using the surplus military hardware to drive out the raiders and gangs to make the place safer. It may still be filled with dead and burned out vehicles and trash everywhere, but over time it'll get better. And it may be worth saying that I've seen some of these junkyards and rundown cars all over the Badlands, so you can find these stuff in game. But anyways, what's the role of the nomads in Cyberpunk 2077? The Aldecaldos and the Race are the two main nomad groups in this game. I mean, Snake Nation's mentioned a few times, but I don't think they actually make an appearance in game, if I'm not mistaken. Alright, I mentioned the Race, but they're really not nomads. They're part of the Wrath and Shiv that I mentioned earlier, those raider guys that are crazy. So the Race are very frowned upon by the nomad, and they're at constant war with the Aldecaldos. In this game, you get a chance to meet the Aldecaldos face to face when you get to help Pan Am Palmer in a few of the main missions, and even in a couple side missions if you choose to. and the Nomads even have their own dedicated ending. But no worries, I will most definitely not spoil the ending for you guys in this video. So I'll let you guys experience with all those choices you have. If you don't know yet and you haven't played the game, you play as V, and you get to choose between 3 different life paths that tell of your character's backstory and even help you primarily with dialogue choices in the story. A lot of people say that the life paths ended up not mattering, but I disagree. Especially if dialogue choices matter to you. Not to mention I've seen yellow colored choices, which are the important choices, that are specifically for nomads. So, life paths do really matter in this game. I personally chose the nomad life path, and I had no regrets to the end. Overall, nomads are a pretty important group in Cyberpunk history, and I personally feel like CD Projekt Red did a wonderful job with the nomads. They did so good with the storytelling with the nomad, from the peaceful flow in their camps to the main characters like Pan Palmer, Mitch, Saul, and all those great characters. I only have one issue with what they did with the nomad, and that is that they did not add enough side missions. Other than the 3 side missions you gotta do to side with the nomads at the end, there is literally only 1 side mission that I can find for the nomads, which is an insanely small amount of content. Don't get me wrong, they did add a lot of nomad content, being that they're a big factor in the main quest at one point. But for the people who already finished the main storyline, they can't do anything else with the Aldecaldos. And you can't even talk to them because the people you can talk to in camp only have 1 or 2 lines throughout the whole game. But literally that's the only problem I have. I hope they fix this with DLC. I really hope they add a Nomad DLC where you get more missions with the Nomads, specifically the Aldecaldos, and the main characters like Panem and Mitch and Saul. But enough of my thoughts, because this is a lore video and not a video on my thoughts. However, please let me know what you guys think about that in the comments, and if you agree, because I am really frustrated I cannot do anything else with the Aldecaldos but look at them. I hope you guys found this video informative and you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, and if you like this kind of content, subscribe and hit the notification bell for future updates on new content. Thanks for watching, and God bless.